Hit it and then go somewhere else. All right. We are on, right? Welcome. Thank you, Melted Copper. Wait, we got several people in here. Oh, Legends for Life. I love that channel. Love that channel. If you haven't checked that out, that's a good one, as long as you like Lego shorts. Okay, so we got a bunch to talk about. From the premier topic that was in the comments that I want to address is SBF's parents. Now, there's a lot of ways to commit a crime where your parents aren't really part of the story. There's also a lot of ways to be a wildly successful CEO where your parents aren't a lot of the story. There's a lot of ways to be an unsuccessful CEO where your parents are not a lot of the story. But Bankman-Fried's parents, man, they are mixed up in this. It's fascinating to me that so far, and I would presume forever, the U.S. Attorney's Office doesn't see a clear path to charging them, which means, for them convicting them, because they're not going to have the evidence necessary to tag them with a conviction, presumably. That's the theory that I'm working from. And one of the reasons that this is going to be so is that SBF, Sam, is the connection between his parents and the company. It's not Ellison. It's not Wong. It's not Singh. It's not any of the other insiders. Hello, back to British British Columbia, Canada. Anyway, so we're talking about the parents. But that doesn't mean they're getting off scot-free, because as you probably know, when the collapse started and the bankruptcy court appointed a trustee to run the company and ousted SBF and the other people, outsiders took over. They took a look at the finances, and one of the very first things that they did was they filed a lawsuit against Samuel Bankman-Fried's parents for, among other things, the reason that I mentioned in the prior video, which was that they received a gift from FTX of real estate worth millions of dollars. That's not okay. Melted Copper is asking, if the parents were to be arrested, would they be locked up together? Now, that's great, because for some married couples that I know, that would be a special kind of jail. It would be even worse. But for some people, that would be great. For me, it would be great. It's pretty easy to keep a clean jail cell. So I feel like there'd be less cleanup to do. But no, the husband and wife are not going to stay in jail together. Not in the Bahamas, not in the U.S., not anywhere. You like the watch? Thank you. This is new. Oh, man, I have a story to tell about this watch. I have a story to tell about it, but I don't want to do it right now. But I will tell about it eventually. Let's see. Oh, what do we got here? Look at this. Sam, I am. You don't know about the bad Sam. Sam Bankman-Fried. You're here for America's Attorney. I am A-OK with that. That is fine by me. I'm glad to see you here. I love to see you in my comments all the time. It's awesome. Somebody has asked, where is this one about the charges? B-Rex10 asked about his current charges. So Bankman-Fried's situation is a little complicated. So he was originally indicted with this indictment right here. And this thing was unsealed last February, I believe. And it was if I'm not mistaken, it was an 8-count indictment. But let me move over to page 12. Yeah, it was an 8-count indictment plus forfeiture. Forfeiture exists in a criminal indictment when the government perceives that there are some assets which were obtained with money that was wrongfully acquired or wrongfully retained by the defendant. So there's a whole lot of assets, both real and more like personal property, that was obtained, according to the government, by illegal activities of SBF and other people on his squad, which we really need to talk about, and we will. I'm going to make a note here about Singh and Wong and Ellison's allocution. We're going to talk about allocution here in a little bit. But it was an 8-count indictment. They kept doing their investigating. The U.S. Attorney's Office did with the FBI. And there was a superseding indictment, which means same counts as before, but now more. And then another superseding indictment, another superseding indictment. And if I'm counting correctly, they got up to 5 superseding indictments, which is what's fascinating about this is every time they redo the indictment, which they got up to 13 counts. They got up to 13 counts, but he's not going to trial on 13 counts. But every time they redo the indictment, it can reset the speedy trial deadline, which was not an issue in this case. Clearly, SBF is a marked man by the DOJ in this case. As I said in my video last week, they were coming for him. The new indictment, the newest indictment, is actually from late March. And it has 13 counts and also the forfeiture claim. However, he was extradited from the Bahamas based on the claims in the first indictment. And the Bahamian government, which is a word I don't get to say very often, I'm glad I'm able to say it now in front of you. The Bahamian government did not agree to extradite Bankman-Fried on the political money claims or counts, meaning even though by my theory, one of the reasons he's a marked man on the fraud is that he is a black eye on the on a lot of high-ranking Democratic politicians, they can't actually go after the campaign finance violations because the Bahamian government did not allow him to be extradited for those claims. That is fascinating. I have a theory about that. Don't know if we'll have time to get into it because I'm going to keep on scrolling down here and see what I am missing. So Anon Mouse says that all the money was gone before the conservator was appointed. Yes and no. If by all the money you mean billions and billions and billions and billions, couldn't agree more. Yes, but not all. And what's one of the things that's so frustrating about these commercial fraud cases, and actually any sort of bankruptcy where there's been just like for real malfeasance, not just incompetence, but malfeasance, is that by the time the whistle is blown and the bad guys have their hands taken off the steering wheel, man, the car is way off the road. And so, like, if I told you that I stole $30 million and then a conservator was appointed and they were able to get back $30 million, you'd be like, wow, they got back so much money. That's fantastic. What a W for the government. But if I steal $13 billion or $13 billion disappears and they recover $30 million, all of a sudden, it really doesn't look that great. And to your point, Anonymous Mouse, that's kind of what's happening here. Accessory after the fact. Great question. This is about SBF's parents. They would have to have been actively helping him cover up one or more of the crimes that he had committed in order to be successfully charged with being accessories after the fact. But all your great comments have obviously gotten me a little off track, because what I was trying to say is that the parents' contact with SBF was the way that they got into FTX. It wasn't through Ellison. It wasn't through Wong. It wasn't through Singh. And so if SBF is not blowing the whistle on his parents, which, believe me, he can't, because he's the bad guy here. I mean, allegedly, but like, let's just say, for sake of argument, he's the bad guy here. It's not his parents. So, I mean, his parents have money that belongs to people, not them. But from a criminal standpoint, it's hard to get there, and they haven't tried to get there yet. Does not mean that they will not. It doesn't mean that they will not. But they're not trying to get there yet. B-Rex 10, I love your question. Is there any hope for the victims to get paid back? The answer is kind of hidden in the answer to what I was saying earlier, which is that if you recover 30 million off of 13 billion, it's not great. Worse yet is that in any sort of bankruptcy, no matter what the situation is, there is a ranking of creditors in terms of who gets the first bite at the apple, who gets the second bite at the apple, and so on. And some people who have lost the highest percentage of their own wealth are going to be nowhere on the priority list for getting any sort of money back. And that is a real shame. I want to see this. Republicans, you heard in my comments, so thank you. Being an actual qualified lawyer. I am actually a qualified lawyer, and thank you for noticing, okay? And you've never had a lawyer. I hope you never need one, but if you do, you know where to find me if you're subscribed, which I hope you are. I hope everyone in here is getting subscribed. Subscribers make my heart beat faster. Love it. How likely, Mark Walters asks, how likely are his victims to receive any of their money back? We kind of covered this one. It's mostly just going to be gone. And because of the pecking order established by federal statute in terms of which creditors get to line up first, a lot of people who lost a lot of money that's very important to them are going to get a raw deal. There's no such thing as accidents in politics like this. Jacob, he was arrested one day before he was to testify in front of Congress. No, it was not coincidental. Now, I don't want you to infer from that I think there was a vast conspiracy or something like that. Here's the thing. When you go to testify before Congress, like you probably will next week, maybe. I don't know what you're into. I hope you don't. Maybe something positive. I've never testified in front of Congress. But when you go there, you're going for really political purposes. There's some showmanship. Oftentimes, there are politicians who want to make a value signal to their constituents, like, hey, look, we're investigating this, investigating that, whatever. Man, that is not how the DOJ operates. When the DOJ wants you, you're theirs. End of story. It's not. I mean, I know that there is a kind of a growing group of people in the U.S. who thinks that the DOJ is over politicized. On both sides, people think that. They do have a hard job, and when politicians do things that are way outside the realm of normal, it really can look like they're politicized. There's really nothing they can do about it. But I want to leave that issue aside for a second and say, well, only for a second, because we are going to come back to it, because SBF is a political figure because of his connections and his donations. So leave that aside. Just want to say the DOJ, they have their man. They're just going to go wreck shop. They had everything that they needed on him. Once they got Ellison's testimony in the bag, they were set. There is a possibility that he could have embarrassed some people in the various political machines based on what his testimony might have been to Congress. But that's not a real threat to me, because I think he has been very careful to try not to do that. I mean, this guy is smart in some ways and dumb in some ways, but obviously he has he knows that there are people who can do him favors, and I don't think he was going to get up there and try to embarrass anybody. Let me scroll down here a little bit. So listen to what Adam says. Adam says SBF must have paid officials in the Bahamian government, but that's only your opinion. Well, here's what we know. He paid people in the U.S. government, both legally and illegally, and they just straight up bribed a Chinese government official. Now, I'm not totally convinced that bribing is illegal in China. I feel like that's kind of the way that the sausage is made there. Here in the U.S., we frown on it. But I'm not sure how much we really frown on, because there are ways that we could, as a society, tamp down the political money. And while we made some strides, what is that, 15 years ago, however long ago that was, the Supreme Court kind of rolled that back some. And honestly, it's not in either political party's best interests to make things clean and above board like regular people like you and me would like them to be. All righty here. Sam, I shouldn't answer this question because it doesn't really have to do with SBF. But because I've been there, I want to help you out. They do not have to read you your rights, okay? You have Miranda rights under the Fifth Amendment. We've had those rights here in the U.S. for about 60 years-ish. And they don't have to read you your rights. However, if they arrest you and you're not free to go and they fail to read you your rights and you confess, or they treat you in ways inconsistent with substantive or procedural due process, then your confession can be thrown out. So they should always read you your rights. If you want to watch a channel that's not going to give you bad information on that, I would lovingly suggest that you check out the Attorney Reacts channel on YouTube and Facebook. I mean, it's a shameless plug because I'm on there, but I'm not the only lawyer on there. There's a bunch of great lawyers on there, and we talk about the Fourth, the Fifth, a little bit about the Sixth Amendment, and we talk about the 14th some also. But back to these topics. How does $13 billion disappear without amassing any assets? Michael, you are asking the right question. And the answer is not on purpose at first, okay? So here's what I think happened. I think that Alameda made some bad investment decisions. And FTX was actually, for a while, a cash cow. They were bringing money in. It was a good business. It was a viable business, okay? They thought, Alameda made a bad deal. We're going to put some money in there and cover it. Alameda will bounce back. We'll be able to get our money back out of Alameda, and everything will be fine. No one will notice that the money was gone. But as so often happens, when you break that barrier between what is right and what is wrong the very first time on something small, and you lie to yourself and you say, self, which is what we all call ourselves, self, I'm going to put this money back just as soon as I can. Something happens in here or in here, and it becomes a little bit easier the next time to get yourself to agree with yourself to take some money and put it where you shouldn't, or do something else that you shouldn't. In a lot of religious traditions, we're talking about a conscience and violating your conscience. And once you do it, you can do it again. And once you do it again, you can easily do it again. And then pretty soon you get pretty darn good at it. And after a while, you're like, well, I didn't even know I ever thought this was wrong. And suddenly they've chased $13 billion of bad debt, bad decisions by Alameda. I mean, it's so dumb, and yet it happens so often. It often repeats itself. Let's see. I just want to put Percy up here just for the love, and I want to give it right back to you. Thank you so very much. Heavyset Media, you're right. I do work with some of my family members. I also work with a bunch of people that I love so much they feel like family to me, but we're not actually related that they know of yet. I might be secretly trying to adopt them. We'll see. I don't know. That's been hard to do secretly. Let's see here. If his parents end up being suspected as collaborators, are they facing similar or lesser charges? So way, way, way lesser. And I hope we get a chance today to get to the question of how long is SBF going to rot, because it is going to be a while. I said in a recent video that he was facing 112 years maximally in prison. It's actually 115 years. I was corrected. I was probably connected also by someone a little bit more versed than I am, but also like the dude is 31. When it's over 70, I kind of don't care, except if you follow sentencing very often, you know that the judge is and by likely, I mean definitely not going to give him the max. It just doesn't happen. But he has an opportunity in less than 48 hours to increase his sentence dramatically. It's fascinating. And I'm not the only one who thinks this. There are other lawyers out there who are commenting on his trial who agree with this proposition. There is a very, very small chance that SBF is not going to be convicted. Okay? He's very likely going to get convicted. There is a chance, however slight, that if he testified, he might not get convicted. Like, meaning, if there's a 2% chance that he's not going to get convicted right now, if he testifies, maybe, just maybe, there's a 3% chance, okay? So it's a 1% chance difference, or if you look at it mathematically, he's improved his odds by 50% because he's gone from 2 to 3, but it's still a very, very small chance. However, if he testifies and he is then convicted, what his testimony is going to have done is demonstrate that he absolutely has no meaningful remorse. He's going to make it clear to the judge that he didn't think it was wrong, or it wasn't his fault, or it didn't happen the way everyone said it did. Not going to look remorseful. You wouldn't testify at this point in the trial to try to get out of a conviction while also trying to reduce your sentence, not in a case like this. So if he takes the stand, he's going to spend longer in prison because of his testimony than if he didn't take the stand at all, because he's just going to make himself seem so amoral. And speaking of that, we came over here from a premiere on my channel, and if you were in the premiere, very much appreciate it. I'm glad you're here. One of the things that I mentioned that I would talk about is his ethical worldview, which has come in through the testimony of Caroline Ellison. His worldview, unless you are a bit of a weirdo out there, is not like my worldview or your worldview. He is something called a utilitarian. And what that means is that he doesn't necessarily agree that telling a lie is wrong or that stealing money is wrong if doing that allows you to do more good or increase the amount of good that you do in the world than the thing that people would normally say is wrong, like punching a kid in the stomach, or like whatever, something that's not a gray area. If you can come up with a reason why it's okay in that situation, then it wasn't wrong for you to do it. Now, this is a way of thinking about right and wrong that is not going to sit well with most American jurors. Doesn't sit well with me. It's not going to sit well with the judge. And if he gets on the stand and he answers questions along those lines, I mean, look, he could perjure himself, whatever. But if he's consistent with the things that he told Caroline Ellison and others, he's going to put himself in a bad spot. Let me stroll down here because I've been out of the comments for a little bit. Ventana RE asks, how are creditors ranked? It's complicated and it's not complicated. It's too much for this stream because I didn't bring the statute with me. But secured creditors, people who take a creditor position with a debtor, but also receive back some collateral, are always going to be first in line with respect to that collateral. And I'm not trying to sound like super fancy. What I mean is, if you buy a house and you put $20,000 down and the bank pays $80,000, so you own the house outright, the bank has collateral, right? They've collateralized your house. And so if you don't pay, if, let's say you file bankruptcy, the bank is going to own your house to the extent that the value of it doesn't exceed, to the extent that the liquidation value of it doesn't exceed the debt on it. All that is to say, there are some people who are favored and some who aren't. And the creditors, the little guys, the customers who are the little guy creditors are almost always going to get hosed. And I just have to say, thank you, Genendorf, for this comment. And I'm going to try, I can't see it though. It's way up there. Would you ever talk about the Chris Chan case and about how that was most likely dismissed? It's a wild one, quite the story, and a great video idea. I'm literally looking at my producer right now and telling her, would you look at this and see if we can do something with it? We love great stories, and we really love story ideas that come from people like you. So let's see. If you feel like so thank you for that question. We will look into it. If you feel like you have been skipped, then just go down to the bottom and put your comment again. I'm working as fast as I can. This is so great. Picanoose, I just don't see it. I see you greeting some people, and that's great. Mrs. Hayes, this is a fantastic point right here. The DOJ does have an endless legal budget when they want to. And if they get a hung jury off of this, which they actually could, and just for the sake of argument, this weekend I put up a poll about SBF on my YouTube channel, which, I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but like, have you subscribed? I want you to subscribe because then you could participate in my polls. But I asked if he was guilty or not guilty. I got 97% guilty. If you put that to a jury, that means that 3 out of 8 times, 3 out of 12 times, a quarter of the time, there's going to be a juror who votes to acquit, which means he's going to get a hung jury, which is so crazy. It's so crazy. But some of the comments on that poll have suggested that the reason that he is going to, that he should be acquitted is, the rude version of it is all these idiots put their money into this business and they should have known better. Well, look, I don't understand crypto. I'm not invested in crypto. One of the lawyers that works with me, he's way into it. He gets it. It's not my jam. Okay. I'm not real big on volatility. Oh wait, I was just being volatile. Sorry about that. No, I don't need volatility. I want to see long-term gains, etc. But they didn't lose out merely because crypto is by its nature volatile. That's not really what happened. They lost out because SBF took their money, built a code bug into the code base, and just shoved the money over to Alameda. And not because Alameda was doing great with it. Listen, it would have been illegal if they took customer money and invested in Alameda, and then Alameda, let's say, bought a bunch of options of Apple stock, and Apple went up and they 10x the money and then gave it back with interest. That would be illegal because they weren't allowed to do it. But ain't nobody going to be complaining about that. But that's not what they were doing. They were chasing bad investments on Alameda with more bad investments. And so, yeah, it's not a good situation. Hey, John Crump News, shout out to CoffeeZilla for his work on SBF. That dude is a baller, a legit baller. And I know, at least I was told, that he was up in New York trying to watch some of this trial in person. Maybe he said that on a video, or a friend of his told me. But the point is, it's hard to get into that courtroom. I think it has like 21 or 31 seats. People line up between 6:30 and 7:30 in the morning or earlier to get in line. Otherwise, they end up in an overflow courtroom where they're like, that's like going to the overflow courtroom. I don't want to make fun of it. First of all, the courtroom that they're trying this case in is way too small. And the fact that cameras aren't allowed in federal court is the most outdated thing. It's ridiculous. And it makes people not trust the legal system, which is even more ridiculous. But the overflow courtroom gets a live feed. So it is like you're watching it. And it's a little bit like if your friend invites you to a Super Bowl party and the house is too full, so you just go to his neighbor's house and watch the game. You're not over there at the party. You are watching the game, but like you're not. Let me see here. Where we got? Fraud is the government's best tool. Yeah, fraud is hard to convict on. It really, as I talked about in the premiere today, it takes insiders or smoking gun, digital evidence usually, which, is digital evidence is just today's documents to convict on fraud usually. And boy, they got it in spades in this case. They got it in spades. Let's see here. The Avengers of Online Lawyers channel. That's probably about Attorney Reacts, or it could be. No, I shouldn't do that. I don't know. I really don't know what that's about. So I'm going to skip on. Hey, Attorney Reacts is great. Mrs. Hayes, you are correct. Let's keep on. Oh, John Crump News says the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Yes, although the road to hell that's supposedly paved with good intentions has curbs on it. And thou shalt not jump the curb. It's just like that. People know when they're breaking the rules. And the easiest way to point this out is the cover-up. Now, this is not one of the cases where the cover-up is worse than the crime. It's not. The crime here is the worst thing. But they hid the fact of what they were doing because they knew it was wrong. Not because they felt guilty about it necessarily, but because they knew that if other people knew about it, it would get stopped. It was wrong. It was a violation of the terms of service, not just the written terms of service, but also the media campaign that SBF was on basically all the time saying, no, we don't do that. We're the safest. This is a question from Mark Walters that I've been wanting to put up here for a while. What sort of jail time / penalty do you think that SBF would get? It's a great question, Mark. You guys should be blowing me up right now in the chat with your answers to this question, because we don't know yet. It is unclear. Now, the max is 115. I saw some lawyers saying he would get north of 20. And when the interviewer tried to pin them down on how north of 20, just north of 20. I don't really know what that means, but it's a foregone conclusion that if he testifies, he's going to make his situation worse. There are people who are outside the legal system who look at the legal system and they just assume that it's dominated by cronyism. And those people would say, it's so funny because if you think that, which is cronyism is like a type of conspiracy theory in that you think there's like a cabal of people agreeing to do something. Well, obviously cronies exist and cronyism exists, but like when and who and how much. And you can't necessarily know that because it's happening where you can't see it. But if SBF gets a light sentence from the judge, you'll have people say, oh yeah, well, he was just doing favors for the Democratic political figures that SBF was connected to. And that's why he got a light sentence. And if he gives a heavy sentence, you'll have some people say, oh, yeah, he was just trying to show how serious the DOJ is taking this in order to not let the Democratic political operatives look bad. And so it's kind of a darned if you do, darned if you don't type situation, in my opinion. And I'm not convinced. In fact, I have no reason to think that the judge presiding over this gives a rip about that. There are sentencing guidelines in federal court, and the judge is beholden to them. Now, they loosened the strictures of those guidelines a couple years back, and the judges now have more latitude than they used to have. And whether that's good or not, I'm not totally sure, because the reason they put the guidelines in place was because studies showed without question that what was happening in sentencing was racist. So they put guidelines in place so that people would get fairer sentences, especially people in protected classes. We're mostly talking about African-American males. Those have been loosened. The maximum penalty is 115. I've not heard anyone say that they think he'll get less than 20. I want to go big here. I want to go big here. He's young. Man, can I wait? You know what? I'm going to give you two versions. You ready? If he doesn't testify, 38. And if he does testify, 49. Those are my guesses. Write them down. We'll see if I'm right. It's hard to know. First, he does have to get convicted first. So we'll see about that. Gleam says that SBF will be rocked by the questioning. Oh, perhaps you watched the George Stephanopoulos interview with him right before he got charged. I mean, George was asking him like real questions. They weren't softballs, but they were real questions, and he failed on those. He couldn't answer them. He's going to struggle in court. Melted Copper says, to get to the max, you got to run down an entire Christmas parade and use the time during the trial to insult every human being you can. That's a shout out to Wisconsin's finest, Daryl Brooks. I'm joking. I love Wisconsin. I love cheese. Don't really love the Packers, but Daryl Brooks, he got the max. But again, state court, murder's a different animal. It really, really is. But you're kind of right. Financial crimes, no matter how badly you ruin someone's life, you are likely not going to get anywhere near the max. And I'm predicting less than half the max if he testifies. 49 out of 115. Let's see here. So a couple of these questions are about the sentencing, which I really appreciate. BREX 10, if Alameda Research didn't take any money or have anything to do with this, was there still any fraud going on? Well, that's a great question. The answer is barely. Because FTX was giving gifts like to Sam's parents, that unless that was with profits, revenue from FTX, that would be a fraud. But that's not what this case is about. This case is 100% about Alameda getting the money. In fact, was the guy's name Easton, the forensic accountant who had testified in the Enron case? Yeah, Peter Easton made a money trail demonstrating not just like the idea of money or the value of money, but that particular dollars went from customer funds into Alameda, and they scored that point very well last week, I guess on either Wednesday or Thursday. And ultimately that's what the trial was about. As AJ says, yeah, it was misappropriation of funds. Let's see here. Now this is a little off track, but do I think Steven of CoffeeZilla regrets naming his YouTube channel something so silly? I don't think so. He seems like a guy who's not filled with a lot of regret to me. And what a lot of people don't know is, from a legal perspective, if you want to trademark a word, coming up with a word that's not real is the ultimate way to do that. So CoffeeZilla has trademarked that word and no one else can use it. And this is why you see all these drug companies who put out a type of drug that's like two words combined, like Happy Magic is the drug would be called Hapjic. And, and it's trademarked and no one else can use it. And they own that word. And so, no, it's not a bad idea. And he better not regret it because it's cool and weird and quirky, just like he is with his suspenders. Let's see here. What do we got here? 3 to 5 years, 9 years out in 4. No, friends. Life with 16 hours a day playing League of Legends. Yeah, he isn't going to a prison where he's going to get beat up. That's not happening. It's not going to be like Rikers Island. I don't believe. I think it's going to be pretty light. But yeah, he's going to be there for a while, but it's not going to, well, they actually can't sentence him with life. Life is a sentence that is only available for bodily crimes, like murder and some other things that people do to other people's bodies. And you can get a life sentence. You can get multiple life sentences, as Darrell Brooks found out. But a sentence can effectively be a life sentence if you can't get out realistically before you die. I don't think that's going to happen to him, but it could. Let's see here. America gets excited about punishing blue-collar crime. Even juveniles get ripped a new one by the law. That's true. We just are not as hard on the white-collar criminals as we should be. And I would like to think that there's a historical reason for that, but I don't know what it is, and I can't say I necessarily agree with it, although crimes against the body of another human, to me, are worse than crimes against the money or the property of another human being. Although we all know that if you harm enough money or enough property belonging to your victim, ultimately that has effect on their body. It changes their lives. And so I get it, but I also don't get it. How many years would I get for selling an invisible statue? You just can't. You can't go to a crime. You can't. That's not a crime. It's a bad investment. If I were the person who was selling it, if I were the lawyer representing the person who was selling it, I would make sure that there was a no warranties clause in the contract to make sure that they understand that what they were getting was actually nothing, because it ain't real. That would be not only in the fine print, but also in the bold print. Heavyset Media says okay. Tulumbra says 20 years minimum was your guess as well. That number is out there. Heavyset say 45, then appeal. No. Now, this is fascinating. An appeal is not going to work to reduce the time. Here's why. At least not if he gets assessed 45 years. Because provided that the trial judge's sentence is within the guidelines, and to the extent that he deviates from the recommended, he puts down a factual basis for the deviation, which, believe me, the judge is smart. He's going to be able to come up with a reason to deviate from the recommended number, either up or down, to whatever extent that he wants to. As long as he follows that playbook, then the appeal is not going to be used to adjust the number of years that is attached to his sentence. Now, if we want to talk about whether he's going to appeal, the real thing that we need to talk about at this point, I think, is his request for ADHD medication, which I think some of you know his lawyers asked for him to have access late last week so that he could participate in his defense. They did not have court on Friday. They filed this motion on Thursday asking for it. You know, the Department of Justice can't exactly say, no, we don't want him to have his medication. That's a bad look. If they don't, and also there's really no reason for them to want to resist it, because if he doesn't get access to his medication, and as the basis for an appeal, he says, I could not assist in the presentation of my defense case, then that's a legitimate appeal. It's stupid. And I don't think that the lawyers for the DOJ are dumb enough to get themselves in a situation to create that appellate ground. And therefore, since they're not dumb enough to do that, the request for it is not necessarily have any chance of working towards giving him grounds for a realistic appeal. Because if I'm the Department of Justice, I'm like, give him whatever he wants. I mean, you don't want him to get too much so then he comes back after the trial and says, oh, I was impaired, I had so much medication. But like, let's have him have the doctor's recommended amount so he doesn't have the basis for an appeal, since you have a smoking, blasting, burning gun of evidence through all of the code, all of the movement of the money, and the testimony from the co-conspirators. I'll say. Let's get down here for a second. Taylor Shabusiness worked in a cheese factory. Don't care, but I guess that's a fun fact. I don't know. Is it? I've been to a cheese factory. It was very small. I was in Vermont or New Hampshire. I liked it. They gave away samples. That was good. Man, B-Rex 10, thanks for the love right there. Love it. Sam I Am, hey, don't forget to hit the like button. Amen, sis. I agree completely. Okay, here's what I want to talk about real quick is Caroline Ellison's testimony. Now, her testimony was really bad for SBF's defense in a couple of ways. Because at one point, they were going to go to a lender, a private equity firm, which I think was called Apollo. And they needed money. This is right near the end. Things are becoming unwound. Basically, the jig is up. They all are now talking on the leadership team openly about the fact that there is a fraud happening. And they're not talking openly in front of other people, but I mean, Caroline had that all hands meeting where she admitted it. She testified that when they were going to go to Apollo to ask for money, Apollo had said, that's great. We need to see a balance sheet from you. Now, a balance sheet, if you don't know, is a mathematical statement of assets and liabilities. It's like, what is the business worth? And there is some art in balance sheets. You know, there are things that don't have a set value, meaning like if you have $80,000 in an account, then that's $80,000. If you owe someone $60,000, that's a real debt. But if you say like the value of my brand is $20,000, well, I mean, that's kind of hard to say yay or nay. It takes some judgment, okay? But she showed Sam, according to her testimony, 7 different balance sheets. Basically, like a choose your own adventure of what would you like this company to look like when you present it to Apollo, meaning how would you like to defraud them? And this is relevant because one of the counts that made it into the 5th and final superseding indictment is the count for fraud against lenders. You know, these are not customers. They were actually trying to defraud lenders. Now, in fairness to that specific claim in that specific instance, Apollo did not give them money. It did not work. But there were other instances where they did that. And I think the DOJ did a pretty good job of demonstrating that the fact that they misrepresented themselves to lenders as well as customers was not accidental. Let's see here. So you're telling me the invisible statue is the crypto. I did not know that, but it makes sense. Well, the answer is people have invested their life savings in these invisible statues. I disagree with that. I'm not trying to be contrary here, but I disagree with that analogy because crypto is more like a contract. It's more like it's actually a lot like a dollar. It's like we agree that this thing is worth something because we all agree that it is. And, back in the day, the government backed money with gold. We haven't done that for 52 years, but crypto is just non-fiat currency. It's just market driven. It's just an agreement. And so the answer is some people will spend a whole lot of money on that. And then there's a bunch of people like me who won't spend anything on it. Running a little behind here, but Horror House Media believes he will get 55 to 75 years. That is north of what I think. Man, 75 is a long time for a crime that is not violent, but he did steal so much money. So I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's uphill. It's uphill. I got to put this love up from, I want to say, Picanuos. Thank you. Thank you for participating in this. It's great to have you in here. Yes, I understand that Tully did sell one of those, and I was not either the lawyer for the buyer or the seller, which is the way that I like it. So Jacob says that crypto is speculative, and yeah, it's true. I mean, that's one of the reasons that it is so volatile is that there's nothing really to tie it to except for the moods of various people and what their appetite for risk is. And so I get it. I was talking about Ellison's testimony. There's a couple things I liked in it. I think if you're following the trial at all, you know that she cried very convincingly. If you have never been in a trial, if you've never been on a jury, never been a witness, never watched one in person, there is a reason that trials are in person, notwithstanding the pandemic. And there were some Zoom trials out there where they met with varying degrees of success. But the reason trials are in person is so that a jury can assess the demeanor of the person who's testifying and ask themselves, like, does she really believe what she's saying? If this is true, does it have an effect on her? Is this real? Was it real to her at the time? What is it like for her to relive this? And it's fascinating to me because one of the elements of her testimony that has that's really kind of stuck with me is that when the whole thing started to unravel, she wrote a note, and I can't remember what channel it was in. I don't know if it was in like a diary or a message that she sent to someone. But basically, when she saw that it was about to burn to the ground, she said, this is like the best I've felt in a really long time. Because you know what? She, in her heart, is not a utilitarian. She knew that what they were doing was wrong. Now, how she got roped into it and why she didn't blow the whistle and why she went along with it, why she didn't just like jump out and say, no, I'm not going to be involved with this. That's complicated. And there's probably not a morally neutral or morally positive answer for that. Although obviously the dynamics of their relationship were peculiar, but heck, the dynamics of relationships with real serious, a little bit psychopathic criminals are always a little odd. And you got Singh was like good friends with Sam's younger brother, Gabriel, and he looked up to him and was intimidated by him. There just wasn't a lot of like outsider checks and balances. This was just Sam's show, and he gathered people around him who would do what he wanted them to do. He couldn't write the code that allowed for Alameda to steal from FTX customers, but he could hire people to tell him to do it. And that's, according to the U.S. attorney, that's what he did. Here's something I didn't like about Ellison's testimony, and I also didn't like a similar feature in Wong's testimony. Like, they have made a deal to testify truthfully, and they have pled guilty to their crimes. Then in their testimony, in various ways, each of them seems to have been trying to shade or color their involvement in the criminal aspects of the criminal enterprise to make it seem like they weren't really at fault or really wasn't them so much. And honestly, I really don't like this. I don't like this if I'm a juror because I want to see them kind of own it. Like the jury knows that they committed crimes. The jury knows that they've pled guilty. If they've had a come to Jesus moment, if they're like, yes, I'm going to the U.S. attorney, I'm going to say what happened, and I'm going to like unburden my soul of the bad things that I've done. Well, heck, do it. Don't come to trial and try to make it seem like you weren't really also at fault. You don't need to do that. In my opinion, as I'm just like imagining myself as a juror, it makes me doubt you a little bit. I want to see you own the things that you have done wrong. And I don't think that she has done that to the fullest extent that I would have liked to have seen. And honestly, to the extent that the U.S. Attorney's Office has woodshedded her or attempt to woodshed her, I wish they could have cleaned that up a little bit. Tellumbra asks, how good is SBF's defense going as of today? I haven't found anyone who thinks that they are doing a good job. Look, candidly, they don't got a lot to work with, okay? According to people inside the trial, when the trial resumes on Thursday, so it's off last Friday, it's off Monday, it's off today and tomorrow. When it resumes on Thursday, the government has about 90 minutes left, which I assume is one more witness just to put one little piece into the puzzle, and then they're going to rest. And the SBF then gets to start his defense. Now, criminal trials are weird. And I say that because I come from the civil side of things. I come where the plaintiff goes first, and then the defendant always makes the case, and then the plaintiff gets to put on a little rebuttal at the end. In criminal cases, if the defendant is not going to testify, and the theory is basically like, you didn't prove your case, there is reasonable doubt, they will sometimes just not call witnesses. And I don't mean just not call the defendant, which is pretty normal to not call the defendant, because you have a right to not incriminate yourself or testify under the Fifth Amendment. And the government bears the burden of proving the case, but they will simply just not call a witness of any kind. And they have done their defense, their presentation of their theory, just in the way that they have crossed the witnesses of the government. Meaning, if the government calls three witnesses and witness A stands for the first proposition, B stands for the second proposition, and C stands for the second factual proposition necessary to obtain a conviction from the jury, the defense strategy could be to say in closing, do you remember when A testified and he said blah, 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 blah? Well, we don't know that that's 100% true. It looks like that's probably like 70% accurate, but there's a 30% chance of that didn't happen. And then he'll move on to number B and say, well, you all heard the testimony of B and it stands for such and such proposition, but that was only about 80% likely, right? You know, there's a 20% chance that how B said it happened, that's not the way it happened. Well, what do you do with 70 and 80? You multiply them, right? And so now you're at 56% chance that a factual situation exists where both facts A and B are true. And now you go to C and you say, okay, well, C's testimony was actually pretty darn good. I think this is me arguing as the defense attorney. C, I think it's probably a 90% chance that things happen the way that C said they did, or that this proposition is true. Well, you take that 90% and you multiply it times 56%, and now you have 50.4%. That is not beyond a reasonable doubt. So a lot of defense strategies in criminal cases are just a nitpick and to poke holes. And they really, really haven't, Tellumbra, poked holes. Like, not in a way that's likely to get an acquittal. And not in my opinion. They're going to have to put some kind of defense on, and I don't know what it's going to look like. They can, as I said earlier, they can have Sam testify. It's probably not going to work, and it's going to make his sentence longer. But like right now, as things stand, it really looks like he's going down. Let's see. Oh, look at this. Polyrhythm says, greetings from Belgium. You love the channel. Hey, I love your chocolate. Isn't it Belgian chocolate? Maybe it's Belgian waffles. I don't know. Hey, I love food. Well, I'm glad you're learning a little bit about our legal system. One of my theories is that the reason that people should consume lawyer content online is that this country, like many countries, is run by laws. And it's important to know how things work. Like the central thesis of why I have my channel is that I want people to know how the law affects our daily lives and how it shapes stories that are in the news and also stories that are not in the news, stories that are in your life or in the lives of your neighbors or your friends. And so I just want people to learn the law as best they can. And then we got Lex saying, what about a comparison to Bernie Madoff? He got his plate full. You know, Bernie got a pretty long sentence, and he was a lot older. I think when he got convicted when he was already in his 70s. And Bankman-Fried, according to my theory, might be out of jail, will probably be out of jail by the time he reaches his 70s, if he does. Yeah, wow. So I think I'm about to wrap up. I'm asking my producer if I am, and I think I probably am. Here's what I would like you guys to do. If you have not liked this video, you got to like it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, come on, please subscribe. It would be fun to have you back. Oh, chocolate and waffles. Yes. Def chocolate. Yes. Oh, and beer. Thank you. Okay. There's a bunch of good stuff coming out of Belgium. That's great. And also great YouTube viewers, I would say. I want you to subscribe to the channel, like this video. If you think of some more things that you would like me to answer, just keep doing comments on the video that premiered today at 2. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna cover SBF either next week or the week after, because we're gonna have the defense presentation and the verdict, and to me, it's fascinating. I think that is about it, and I'm going to leave this video with Kat Durow's chat on the screen. I love what you do, man. You really made me think about how I interact with the world. That is why we're doing this. Melted Copper, I'm sorry. I think it is over. Hey, guys, you were here for the very first time that I streamed. I've never streamed before. I am glad to have been able to do it. It's been fun. Super glad to have you guys here. And I hope that I will see you on my channel real soon. Thanks a lot. Are we good? You happy? Okay.